Hey there, it's Steve from Serious Keto, and in this video I am going to review Carbonaut bread. Now this is one of the most requested products I've been asked to review. So here we go. It seems not a week goes by that I don't get someone asking me if I've tried Carbonaut bread or if I would do a review of Carbonaut bread. Now I haven't seen it anywhere around here in Wisconsin. Apparently it's regionally available both in the US and in Canada at places like Costco, Target, Whole Foods, etc. It's also available on Amazon. Now interestingly, last week Carbonaut reached out to me and asked if they could send me some bread, and I said, sure, I'll give it a try. They sent me their hamburger buns, their white bread, their seeded bread, and their cinnamon raisin bread. When I looked up the prices for the loaves of these breads or the bag of the buns, I had a little bit of sticker shock. It seems the prices range anywhere from about $6 a loaf or bag to $12, depending on how much you buy. So, a little pricey. This better taste really good. Also, one of the things that I haven't been doing in videos lately is testing my glucose. I had one continuous glucose monitor left, and I wanted to save it for a special occasion. This is that occasion. So I've got it on, and I'm going to test using the Levels software. Now first, let's take a look at the ingredients. The white bread, seeded bread, and buns, pretty much all the same. We've got water, wheat protein, resistant potato and or tapioca starch, flax meal, high oleic sunflower oil. I hope I pronounced that right. Oleic? I know I pronounced sunflower right. Psyllium husk, yeast, inulin, cultured wheat starch, pea fiber, salt, and citric acid. The cinnamon raisin bread is sort of the odd man out here. That uses primarily modified resistant tapioca starch. What else we got there? The high oleic sunflower oil, chicory root fiber, native cornstarch, psyllium, yeast, modified cellulose, rice bran, xanthan gum, cinnamon, natural flavor, and salt. Now for each of these tests, I will be eating the bread or buns the way that I would eat them in real life, meaning either toasted with butter on it, or as a sandwich, or with a burger. Now I realize that having these additional ingredients may blunt the glucose response a bit, but I'm aware that I want to eat these the way that I would eat them in real life and test them the way that my body would, I guess, deal with them in real life. So we're going to head on over to the toaster and toast up some cinnamon raisin bread, butter it up, give it a test. All right, I'm going to start by taking a glucose reading. We're at 96, and you can see it's been stable pretty much since I got up this morning. I have toasted and buttered 2 slices of this bread, which I will now take a picture of with the Levels software so that we can start the tracking. So here we go, my first ever taste of Carbonaut bread. Now, it does not have the sort of gluten-y chew that normal bread has. It also, as soon as I buttered it, it really kind of got kind of thin. I don't know if you can see it all that well. Texturally, I'd say it's better than any store-bought keto bread that I've had in the past. There's still something almost a little bit powdery-like to it that's in my mouth. It doesn't have that same sort of, like I said, that chew and moisture of traditional bread, but it's all right. I think that's about the best I can say about it. It's all right. I don't feel like this is something I would really be craving from time to time. But if it doesn't spike my blood glucose, I could see making some bread pudding out of this. So I'm going to eat this other piece, and then we'll be back in 2 hours to see what the impact was. So at the 2-hour mark, the Levels software has enough data to rate this particular food item, and it rated it as a 4. That's not great. It's not horrible, but still a 42-point spike in my blood glucose, and it lasted over 90 minutes. Let me see where we're at right now. So here we are 2.5 hours later, and I'm still at a 111 for my blood glucose. Started at a 96, so I haven't even gotten back to baseline yet. Now, since blood glucose tends to lead in terms of a metric by about 15 minutes versus a continuous glucose monitor. I took my reading at 23 after the hour. This was just getting right close to the 2-hour mark using a Keto Mojo, and I was at 120. I took my reading 15 minutes later on the Freestyle Libre, and I got exactly what I expected, a 120. So it's good to see that there's consistency in the measurements. What's bad to see is that that bread is gonna be a no-go. So now I'm gonna try out the white Carbonaut bread. Now the reason I made those air quotes is if you look at this, it's really sort of a light wheat looking. It's not like white bread, like Wonder Bread type white. Once again, I'll start by grabbing a glucose reading. And we are at a 91. Then I'll use the Levels software to kick off the measurement. And I'm going to test this out a couple of different ways. The smell, fairly bready. Oh, it's tearing like bread. Now I'll try it without anything on it at all. That tastes a lot like real bread. The texture, maybe just ever so slightly spongier than normal bread. Not so much, like gluten-y chewy, but sort of spongy chewy. I'm going to butter up the rest of this slice. And then, while I eat this, I'll toast the other piece to see how well it toasts up. I am really hoping that this doesn't spike my blood glucose the same way that the cinnamon raisin toast did, because this is good. I mean, this is the best keto bread that I've had. I can so totally envision putting a little bit of nut butter on here and some no sugar added strawberry jam. That would be a delightful little sandwich. Butter this up. And unlike the cinnamon raisin bread, this stood up to the butter. It wasn't so much like that other bread compressed under force as it just, once it got wet with the butter, it just sort of shrunk down and got thin. Not a problem on this. Again, this is so close to real bread. I'm praying that this does not cause a blood glucose spike because, wow, this is some good stuff. But I will be back in 2 hours after the Levels software has had time to analyze the results, and we'll see where we're at. It's been a little over 2 hours. Let's do a reading. Okay, we had a pretty obvious bump there. You can see that. It's a little over 2 hours later, and I'm still at 103. So, what was that, like 10 points over my baseline? What was I? I think, a 91 when we started. So, still not back to baseline after 2 hours. Let's see what the Levels software says. Similar to the cinnamon raisin brand, this is rated as a 4. Once again, a moderate spike, 38 points. That is a disappointment because I really liked that bread. I'm not trying to be dramatic about it, but I was really, really, really hoping that I wasn't going to see a spike from the bread. I'm going to continue this video, though, over the next couple of days. I'm going to try out the seeded bread and I'm going to try out the hamburger buns, see how those affect me. Right now, I'm not super duper optimistic. I think also after 4 days of testing, it'll be curious or interesting for me to see what my overall ketone response is over this period. So I will include that as well as we move on with this video. But it's looking like the white bread for me also no go. So I'm back for my third day of testing, and today we're going to do the seeded bread. Now this bread is largely the same as the white bread ingredient-wise. I'll put them both up side by side here. So in terms of ingredients, the big difference is the seeds. Also, for whatever reason, the seeded bread has 1 gram fewer carbs, still the same net 2 grams of carbs. I'll quick grab a baseline glucose reading, and I'm at 86. I'm not going to kick off the Levels software quite yet, and I'll explain why in just a second. But first, I'm going to taste the bread straight up. This is some really great tasting bread. No doubt about it. But I want to test the impact on blunting the glucose response by making an actual sandwich out of this. I got some pepperoni, some salami, some provolone. We'll slather it up with some mayo, and we'll see what the impact of that is. So right now I'm going to make that sandwich. I'm going to kick off the level software analysis, and I'll see you back in 2 hours. It's been a little over 2 hours, so let's do a glucose test. 98. So still not back to baseline, which was 86 after 2 hours. Let's see what the level software has to say about this reaction. Gentle rise, so 6, a better score. Blood glucose only went up by 24 points, and I was only above 110 for 15 minutes. Based on the numerous videos that I've done on resistant starch, one of the consistent things that I have found is that the presence of fat seems to blunt a glucose response. And certainly that seemed to be the case in this sandwich as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try out the burger bun with a burger on it. That should also blunt the glucose response. But then, as sort of a apples to apples comparison, I'm going to take some Dave's Killer bread, which is just, regular wheat bread, make the exact same sandwich that I made with the Carbonaut bread and compare those two together. All right, it's time to try out the burger bun. Let's start by getting our baseline glucose. We're at a 90. As I indicated previously in this video, my plan is to eat this burger bun the same way I would eat it in real life, which is with a burger on it. All right. We got 2 slices of cheddar on the burger, a little homemade mayo, and a couple little slices of tomato. Once again, I'll kick off the level software to do the analysis of my glucose. And then I'm going to eat this burger and be back in 2 hours with the results. All right, I was so excited about eating that burger, I forgot to do the taste test results. Well, it was pretty great. I mean, it wouldn't take a whole lot to convince me that that's just a regular bun and not a keto bun. It pretty much was just like eating a whole wheat bun. So, taste-wise, another winner. Let's see, though, what the impact was on my blood glucose. Down to a 94 after just over 2 hours. And let's see what the level software had to say. Interesting. We had an 8. So 10 is the best score. This got an 8. It registered as a stable response. Only 14 points. Movement never went over that 110 threshold. Now, if you look at the nutritional information on both the white bread, which really seems more like a wheat bread, and these buns, the buns actually have more carbs total and more carbs net than the bread. And yet I didn't experience any appreciable glucose spike. This pretty much leads me to believe that, once again, it's fat that blunts a glucose response. I guess the way to test this is to go back to the white bread and toast that up and put a burger patty in between them and see if I get the same results that I got with the bun. So I'm back to test the white bread again, this time with the burger on it. We'll grab baseline glucose, and we are at 84. All right, we've got our burger with 2 slices of cheddar. Top it with some tomato. Here we go. Take a picture with the level software to kick off the analysis. And I'm not going to make you watch me eat this. Just trust that I'm gonna, and I'll be back in 2 hours. All right, let's take a look at where we're at. It's been a little over 2 hours. 103. Now if we go to the levels software, all right, you can see that this performed a little bit better than the white bread on its own. It got a score of 5 as opposed to a 4. Still went up 32 points, and was over 110 for 53 minutes. Now, one of the really cool things about the level software is you can compare two different food items to one another, which we're going to do right here. You can see the green, that is our burger done on the Carbonaut white bread. And it doesn't go up nearly as high as the white bar, which was just the straight white bread with the butter on it. So clearly adding that extra fat does have a blood glucose blunting effect. But now let's compare the two burgers to one another. Here in the green, once again, you see the burger that I did on the Carbonaut white bread. In white is the burger bun with the burger. Now these burgers were identical. So it's interesting, and I honestly don't know what to make of it. Given the ingredients, given the macros, I can't explain why the cheeseburger on the bun performed so much better than the cheeseburger on the bread. I feel at this point the only data point that's really sort of missing for me is how does the Carbonaut bread compare to just a regular whole grain seeded bread? And that's what we're going to do in the next segment. So yesterday I did a final test. I made a sandwich using Dave's Killer Bread. Now this is anything but low carb bread. If you look at the macros right here, we're talking 13 grams of net carbs per slice, and I had 2 slices on that sandwich. So plenty of carbs. The sandwich itself was exactly the same as the one that I had made previously on the seeded bread. So it was salami and pepperoni, 2 slices of provolone, and some homemade mayo. And I can tell you, I didn't love it. For starters, the texture was just really sort of weird to me. I mean, it was sticking to my teeth. I forget if regular bread is like that, but I was constantly finding myself trying to get it out of my teeth. Additionally, when I got done, I kind of felt a little bit sick. I mean, I felt gross. But how did it perform in the level software? Surprisingly, it rated a 6. I was expecting it to be a lot worse than that. Only a 26-point rise in glucose. And typically 30 points is what you would categorize as a spike. Now let's compare the Dave's bread sandwich to the Carbonaut bread sandwich. And this first graph is a little bit misleading because it's absolute. And I started at a lower blood glucose rate on the Dave's bread. So the Dave's bread is the green line, the lower line, which makes it look better. And the white line is the Carbonaut bread. But the cool thing about the level software is you can compare two things relative to one another. So putting them both at a 0 for a starting point. And then what you see is that Dave's bread did actually perform worse than the Carbonaut bread when I made the same sandwich. Not tremendously worse, because it was still less than 30 points, but there was a difference. Also interesting is I take daily ketone readings with my Keto Mojo and did not get knocked out of ketosis even after 6 days of eating these various breads. So my ketones were, and I got to look down at my notes, 0.8, 0.7, 2.1. That was a day when I had a ribeye, so I was getting plenty of fat on that day. 0.7, 0.9, and 0.9. So my readings, my ketone readings, were the same the day I had that sandwich, so the morning before I had that sandwich, and the morning after I had that sandwich. So let's wrap all of this up. What is my summary on this Carbonaut bread? First off, taste. With the exception of the cinnamon raisin, which I really didn't care a whole lot for the taste or the texture. The texture was really weird. Like I said, when I put the butter on it, it sort of just compressed. It just almost like it was melting back into a wafer or something like that. And the texture seemed almost a little bit powdery to me. The other two breads and the buns, they were great. I mean, they were great. That full stop. Next up we have price. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, these are not cheap products. It's one of those things though where I think maybe you get what you pay for because they are really good. I think if price is going to be the thing that makes or breaks your decision, the question has to be how frequently are you going to eat this bread? Do you want to buy it in volume and get a discount? That's a personal decision. Then finally we get on to the glucose aspects of this bread. And this is where it really becomes a personal decision. Now, as I think you've seen from my numbers, I'm pretty metabolically flexible or fat adapted. It takes a lot to knock me out of ketosis. And your mileage may vary. One of the things I say repeatedly whenever I do glucose testing on a video is you need to own your own numbers. Whether that's with a Keto Mojo or if you decide you want to sign up for the Levels program, you got to own it yourself. And I think if you look at my numbers and you know that I'm pretty fat adapted, I think if you're a type 2 diabetic, you kind of got to say no on this bread. I don't think this is going to work for you. If you yourself are also metabolically flexible, then, if you're interested in the flavor and you can handle the price, I think this is a great bread. But I'm sorry that I can't give a one-size-fits-all conclusive answer as to whether or not you should get the Carbonaut bread, but I hope I've provided enough information that you can make your own decision. If you found this video helpful, please click that like button. If you're not a subscriber already, why not? Hit that subscribe button and then hit the bell to turn on all notifications. And lastly, if you'd like to help support the Serious Keto Test Kitchen, click that join button and see what memberships and perks are all about. Thanks for watching.